Okay, so let's get started. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So, hi and welcome, and again, it's great to have you here. I see we've got a few people who've returned and some new ones. So let me just introduce myself. I'm Nerida. I'm the lead trainer and assessor here at TAE Institute, and I'm a long-time advocate for quality training and meaningful learner outcomes. I believe that learner support isn't just a nice add-on. It's actually at the heart of what we do and what a great RTO does. When support is embedded, responsive, and inclusive, it sets learners up not just to complete our courses, but to grow in confidence, capability, and real-world readiness. So let me just ask for a quick show of hands. Who here has had a learner completely disappear halfway through the course? Yep, us too. So let's talk about how we can reduce that happening. So again, I've got a lot to cover, so I won't have time to answer questions, but please feel free to pop them into the comment section or to add any other comments that you would like to make into that chat, and we'll contact you later with some responses. Also, just know that the recording and the slides will be available later today. Okay, so we're diving into something that's close to the heart of good training, supporting our learners in ways that actually make a difference, not just ticking the box to say we've done it. So we're going to have a look at outcome area 2 of the standards for RTOs 2025. And this is about how we support, include, inform, and check in with our learners throughout their journey. So we'll have a quick overview of the whole of outcome area 2, and then we'll focus on standards 2.3, 4, 5, and 2.6. And so by the end, you'll hopefully walk away with a few new ideas, maybe even a refreshed view of what good learner support can look like, even if you've been in the game for years like me. So outcome area 2 is essentially about treating our learners like they're actual human beings, not just names on an enrolment spreadsheet. It covers everything from the first time they hear about us, right through to when they feel confident and job ready at the end. And yes, it includes the boring but important bits about being clear about fees and support services, because nobody likes nasty surprises halfway through their course. So I think that outcome area 2 has a key message for us, and this is about the learner experience, not about the enrolment paperwork. So just quickly through the whole of the standards. So standard 2.1, it's basically saying, tell them everything they need to know, clearly, honestly, and upfront. 2.2 wants us to help them work out if this is the right course at the right time. And if it's not, help them to find a better option. Good information and good advice at the start can make all the difference to whether someone completes the course or walks away wondering what the hell did I get myself into. 2.3 wants us to make sure that learners can get help when they need it and make sure they know how. And 2.4, if somebody needs fair adjustment, do what you can to make that happen and don't leave them guessing. Real support doesn't just sit in a policy. It shows up in practice every day in ways that help learners feel respected, supported, and capable. And inclusion isn't just something we say. It's how we enrol, teach, assess, and how we behave. So standard 2.5 wants us to make the learning environment a place where everyone feels safe, respected, and supported. especially for those who haven't always had a good experience. And you know, an inclusive RTO just isn't better for the learners, it's actually better for everyone. 2.6, let's know our learners. Anticipate the bumps in the road and have some support ready for when our learners hit them. When learners feel supported as people, not just students, they're more likely to stay engaged and complete their course and believe in themselves along the way. 2.7, make it easy for learners to speak up and use what they say to improve. And 2.8, if a learner thinks a decision was unfair, give them a fair process to challenge it. At the end of the day, learners should feel like their voice matters and that your RTO actually takes feedback seriously, even when it's uncomfortable. So, Australia's vet sector is full of all kinds of learners, from school leavers to career changers, from First Nations students to those juggling kids, work and study. The standards for RTO 2025 remind us that training has to reflect that diversity. It's not just about delivering the content, it's about creating space where everyone feels supported to learn and grow. So that starts by recognising that not everybody begins at the same point. Some learners might face barriers, disability, digital access, or past education gaps. Some have caring responsibilities and some have experienced trauma. Our job is to spot those needs early, offer the right support and adjust where needed. And always create an environment that feels culturally safe and inclusive, especially for those who have been underrepresented. So, RTOs are expected to get to know their learners early on with documented evidence, not just psychic powers. From there, it's about putting the right support in place. And let's not forget, support also means creating a space that feels safe and inclusive and welcoming. We want people to be able to come to our learning space and all have the same opportunity. We don't want people to be thinking, oh my God, this place isn't for me. Support could be flexible deadlines, screen readers, large print resources, or assessments that aren't designed for just one type of learning. Throw in some access to tech, tutorials, or a mental health referral if needed, and then we're on track. And who makes all of this magic happen? It's particularly our trainers and assessors. You're the legends adapting the delivery, noticing the quiet learners, and making sure that support actually hits the mark, not just the policy. So let's face it, learners need more than just good content or well-written assessments to succeed. They need real people who can guide them, support them, and give them a nudge or a lifeline when things get tricky. And that's what Standard 2.3 is all about. It says that learners should have reasonable and timely access to trainers and assessors and support staff, not just in theory, but in practice. To meet Standard 2.3, RTOs need to show that support isn't something that we just talk about. It's something that we plan for. And that means taking a thoughtful, learner-first approach to figuring out what support students might need and make sure they can access the right people and services when they need them, not weeks later when it's too late. They also need access to things like LLM help, tech support, tutorials, and any other training service that matches their course and their learning needs. We know no two learners are the same. Some are jumping back into study after years away. Others are juggling jobs, families, or just trying to figure out how to use the online platform without accidentally exiting the course. Some just need getting help started, and others need checking in along the way just to make sure they stay on track. So here's how we're going to meet Standard 2.3 without overcomplicating it. Let's just focus on these 5 things. 1, we need to start early. Get to know your learners before things get tricky. So we're going to use our LLM and our digital skills checks. We can ask about past experience, and let's map it all in a simple learning plan. Get learners to tell us what support they need and how they prefer to get it. Tailor support to the course and the cohort. So different training products and different learner groups need different things and different kinds of help. So, a young apprentice isn't going to need the same thing as someone returning to study after 20 years. Adjust your support strategy accordingly and make it easy to find. Don't bury it in fine print. Tell learners what support is available, how to access it, and who to talk to. Use your LMS, your handbooks, even welcome sessions. Or what about an email footer to spread it to the world? Be available when your learners need you and set clear expectations around trainer responses and provide structured times to connect. And if your learners are working full time, maybe we could even offer support between the 9 to 5. We want to check in and we want to improve. So get feedback, track what's working, and adjust your approach. And if you're using third-party providers, make sure their support is just as solid. So even with the best intentions, support can fall flat if we're not careful. So here's a few traps that RTOs need to steer clear of. Not telling learners what support exists and how to get it. Offering one-size-fits-all help that misses the mark for specific cohorts. Letting third-party services run unchecked without checking the quality. Taking too long to reply, or worse still, not replying at all. And forgetting that support needs can change as the course goes on. So Standard 2.3 gets it. Learners can't thrive on content alone. They need people, tools, and services that are accessible, responsive, and tailored. And it's about creating a learning culture where students feel supported, connected, and comfortable enough to ask for help before they fall behind. Inclusive education isn't about giving some learners a shortcut. It's about making sure everyone has a fair chance to succeed. Standard 2.4 focuses on learners with disability and the importance of reasonable adjustment. Simple, practical changes that can help them participate fully without compromising the qualification. Now, we know that disability can take many forms. We have physical, sensory, intellectual, mental health, and even people may have temporary conditions that may affect their ability to take the course. Whatever it looks like, the key is this. Learners need to feel safe to speak up, and RTOs need to be ready to respond with respect, flexibility, and the right kind of support. And it's not about lowering the bar. It's about clearing the path so every learner has a chance to reach it. What matters is that the RTO creates a space where learners feel safe to speak up and then work with them to put the right support in place. No fuss, no stigma, just fair access. So what does Standard 2.4 actually ask of us? In short, be flexible, fair and clear. RTOs need to make it easy and safe for learners to disclose a disability at enrolment or any time during the training, and offer reasonable adjustment to help them participate fully in a large print, extra time, assistive tech, or different ways to show competency. And also, we must be clear. If something can't be adjusted, then we need to explain why. And always make sure that any changes still meet the competency standard. Because fairness isn't about lowering the bar. It's about supporting access without compromising the integrity of the training. So basically, I think inclusive education means making every learner gets a fair go, including those with a disability. Okay, so here's quite a bit for us to think about. How do we make reasonable adjustment work in practice while still meeting the standard? So again, it's about making disclosure safe and easy. We need to let learners know right from enrolment they can ask for adjustment. We assure them that disclosure is voluntary and that info is handled confidentially. So we use our enrolment forms, interviews, our learning plans to start that conversation gently. We want to respond quickly and together. So if someone does disclose, don't delay. Have a respectful chat. You may need to have some support people with you. We need to understand how their disability impacts their training and what might help. We need to document it in a simple support plan and then make sure that the relevant staff are actually looped in. Tailoring our approach. We know that adjustments shouldn't be one size fits all. Think verbal assessments instead of written. I don't know, flexible schedules. Or even maybe offering a note taker. It all depends on the learner's needs, the course content, and how it's delivered. Yes, as I said, we need to protect the convocation's integrity. So adjustment needs to help learners participate. They don't remove the core skills or the tasks. If something truly can't be changed, explain it clearly and kindly, and look for other training or assessment options if needed. Make sure your trainers and assessors know their responsibilities under the disability standards and help them recognise barriers, apply adjustments confidently, and create a learning space that's flexible, inclusive, and fair for everyone. Now, there's a few big no-nos when it comes to supporting learners with disability. And RTOs need to avoid forgetting to ask learners if they need support. Creating an environment where disclosure feels risky or uncomfortable. We don't want people not to be able to voluntarily say, I need help. And making off-the-cut adjustments that aren't recorded or shared with the right people. We need to be clear, and we need to make sure that we don't wait too long. We want to make sure that we offer help when the learner needs it. So standard 2.4 isn't about treating everybody the same. It's about giving everybody a fair go. And that means flexible, well-planned, and properly documented so that learners feel included and the qualification keeps its credibility. So we're up to standard 2.5. And here's the bottom line. Australia's vet system needs to work for everyone, no matter somebody's background, identity, or life experience. They deserve a learning environment where they feel safe, respected, and able to succeed. So 2.5 makes this crystal clear. RTOs must create spaces that are inclusive, culturally respectful, and free from discrimination or bias. And it's also about basic human dignity and equity. And sure, inclusion benefits everyone, but it's especially important for our First Nation learners, people with disability, our called learners. We even need to think about, like women stepping into male-dominated fields like trades or tech, or on the other hand, men stepping into female-dominated fields. And those returning to study after a long break. They've got a bit of life under their belt, but they need to make sure that they're actually accepted as well. When we create an inclusive space, learners just don't turn up. They participate and grow, and they go on. And that's where real learning happens. Just excuse me. So inclusion isn't just something we do during enrolment. It should be built into every part of the learner experience. So RTOs must actively create the space that's free from racism, discrimination, harassment, and bias. And when it comes to our First Nation learners, that means fostering cultural safety with respect, understanding, and commitment to doing better. Now, this applies across the board. It's in your marketing and enrolment messages, how your trainers deliver the content and manage the room, in assessments, how they're set up and how feedback is given, and in what support services are offered and how accessible they are. And it's also in the attitudes and awareness of all staff, not just the trainers. Inclusion isn't one policy. It's how we show up every step of the way. So inclusion isn't something we add on, it's something we build in right from the start. So why don't we think about starting with some inclusive marketing material? Use diverse messages and inclusive language and show learners they belong before they even enrol. And avoid stereotypes about who the course is for and actively reach out to underrepresented groups. I think too, we also need to give learners a chance to share their needs, their cultural obligations. So, things like preferred name or their pronouns on enrolment forms. They're small details, but they make a big impact. We need to make our training and assessment inclusive as well. So plan those learning activities to work for different backgrounds and learning styles, and be flexible about how learners show what they know. Well, still sticking to the unit requirements. Use real-world examples that are culturally relevant and don't penalise learners for meeting family or community commitments. And above all, check that your assessments aren't biased or built on assumptions. It's really important that we help our staff build their cultural competence. And this isn't just about one PD session. We need to provide ongoing training about how cultural awareness, bias, and respectful engagement helps our learners grow. We want to encourage curiosity and humility, especially when we're working with our First Nation communities. And where possible, bring First Nation courses into your course delivery, not just as guests, but as partners. So we really want to create those culturally safe spaces for our First Nation learners. And then we want to monitor and review that inclusivity by asking for learner feedback and making changes that reflect that feedback. So standard 2.5, RTOs need to stay alert to the things that can unintentionally shut learners out. And that means avoiding common missteps like assuming every learner needs the same kind of support. Skipping consultation with First Nations or diverse communities. Teaching with a one-size-fits-all approach, and not training staff in inclusion, cultural safety, or trauma-informed practice. And delivering training in ways that just aren't accessible for learners with a disability. The key message is inclusion isn't a bonus, it's the background of good training. And when we build safe, respectful and culturally aware learning environments, we create spaces where all learners can show up, participate, and most importantly, succeed. So 2.6 is about learner success, not just about the marks and the modules, it's about their well-being. Standard 2.6 reminds us that stress, mental health issues, financial pressures, or things like housing instability can seriously impact learners' ability to stay engaged and succeed. And that's why RTOs need to make a proactive, learner-first approach, identifying what learners might need early and have strategies in place, so no one's left struggling in silence. So to meet Standard 2.6, RTOs need to do more than just offer support. They actually need to plan for it. And so that means knowing what wellbeing challenges your learners might face, depending on the course or the delivery mode. And knowing what wellbeing challenges your learners might face, depending upon the course or the delivery mode. And then putting the right support into place, whether that's internal help, maybe we need to do referrals to outside services. Making sure learners actually know what support is available and how to access it. And of course, making sure our trainers and assessors understand their role in spotting issues and pointing learners in the right direction. Wellbeing support isn't the poster on the wall. It needs to be practical, planned, and learner-focused. Here's how to make it count. Know your learner cohort. Use those enrolment chats, those learner profiles, and the data to spot wellbeing risks early. So I think we need to think about things like shift work or high-risk placements or heavy course content, and keep checking in, not just at the start, but all the way through. Offer the support that fits your learners. Study skills, counselling referrals, maybe financial assistance, just those wellbeing checkouts during stressful weeks. And make sure third-party providers are also on board. Tell learners what are available, from orientation to the LMS. Let learners know what support exists and how to access them. And use language that makes help seeking feel normal, not something to be ashamed of. And support your staff to support others. Help trainers spot when someone's struggling and give them the tools to respond respectfully, safely, and in line with their responsibilities, and keep improving. Get the feedback, watch the data. Wellbeing needs change, and your strategy should too. So when it comes to learner wellbeing, there are a few big traps RTOs need to avoid. So as well as all the things we've talked about, not checking in, offering one-size-fits-all support, and forgetting to tell learners what support is available, we also need to be sure that the support isn't just kept at management level. We need to make sure that our trainers and our staff are kept in the loop, don't act without consent or cross privacy lines, and don't ignore the impact of third-party settings like most placements. Standard 2.6 gets it. Learning and wellbeing go hand in hand. If someone doesn't feel that safe or supported, it's hard to stay engaged, let alone succeed. And that's what wellbeing needs are part of that's why wellbeing needs are part of a training culture, not just a policy tucked away into a folder. We need to embed it and support it into everyday practice. Okay, so let me have a sip. So, part of all of this is about learner progression. And so this is where things get real. Meaningful learner progression means not just waiting until the end of the course to find out if someone's got it. We want to see learners growing, improving, and getting more confident as they go, not just cramming everything into the night before the final assessment. Progression can show up in small ways. A learner starts to speak up more. They improve their time management, or they finally master that tool they were scared of in week one. These little wins matter. So have a think about what's something you've seen a learner do that kind of says, oh, they've had that light bulb moment. Yep, they're getting it. RTOs are expected to provide clear evidence that learners aren't just coasting through. They're learning, growing, and heading somewhere useful. And that means showing where they started, the strengths, their barriers, the whole mix. And then what kind of tailored support they got and how they improved over time. Not just hitting competent in week 10 and then calling it a day. And most importantly, we need to show that they can actually apply their learning in real world. If they've done a course on hospitality, they should know how to carry 3 plates, not just write it in a multiple choice question. So how do we actually do that? I think first up, we need to be looking at our formative assessment. These are your little check-ins along the way. Quizzes, draft submissions, class discussions, quick skills demos, you name it. It's about catching progress as it happens and giving learners a chance to course correct early. Then I think it's practical tasks. Nothing shows learning like doing, whether it's building something, writing something, or role-playing a customer service scenario. Watching learners in action tells you so much more than a multiple choice quiz ever will. And then we've got learner reflections. And I think these are gold. Ask learners to jot down what they've found easy, what tripped them up, and what they do different next time. Now, it gives us insight, but it also helps them build their metacognition. You know, that's a fancy word for thinking about their thinking. And finally, engagement data. It's not just about attendance. Look at who's logging in, submitting tasks, asking questions, or suddenly going quiet. That tells the story. And it gives you a chance to step in before a small wobble becomes a full-blown derailment. So here's something we all know deep down, but sometimes we forget when we're buried in timelines and training plans. Learners don't all start from the same place. So what are we expected to do as RTOs? So we need to first start by identifying learners' needs at enrolment. And so this is where our language literacy and numeracy or digital skills or prior knowledge all come into play. We can even ask people about their learning anxieties. Ask the right questions early and you'll save a lot of detours later on. Second, I think we need to use those individual learning plans. These are like our roadmaps tailored to each learner. They help us track where they started, where they're going, and what kind of support they'll need along the way. And no, they don't have to be complicated, just need to be useful. And third, adjust your delivery and assessment methods when needed. someone needs more time, or learners, they learn better through visual tools, or needs content chunked into small pieces, then do it. That key is to support without lowering them. Competency still matters, but there's often more than one way to reach it. Okay, let's talk about real-time monitoring. Because in today's vet world, waiting until the end of the unit to realise something's not working just doesn't cut it. So what does that look like in practice? Well, it means tracking learner engagement and performance regularly, and not just relying on your gut feeling. Although I've got to say, our intuition is definitely valuable. But we're talking about those tools like our attendance records. Showing up is half the battle. Our LMS analytics. Who's logging in? Who's going missing? And who's been watching modules at 2 a.m. in the morning? We want to look at skills checks, those quick snapshots of where learners are, practically speaking, and trainer observations, informal on-the-ground insights into confidence and capability. But tracking is only the first step. You've got to act on what you see. So real-time support isn't about Big Brother watching. It's about being present, being proactive, and being responsible. And let's do it before things fall apart. So how do we actually see learner progress? Seeing learner progress means looking beyond the paperwork. Written assessments have their place, but they don't always tell us if someone can actually do the job. What really matters is how learners perform in action, on placement, in simulations, or in class. That's where the real evidence lies. Can they apply what they've learned? Do they improve with practice? And are they becoming more confident, more independent, or more adaptable? So we just don't want to tick off skills. We want to watch our learners. We want to see them moving from trying it out to owning it. And whether that's digital tasks or practical tools or workplace communication, we're not just preparing them to pass, we're preparing them to step confidently into the job. Okay, so learners don't enrol in a vet course just to collect the certificates. Most of them are here because they want a job or a promotion or a way forward. So our job as RTOs is to make sure we're teaching actually matches what industry needs. And that's at the heart of this next bit. Progression must lead to job-ready outcomes, not just course completion. So how do we do that? We need to stay in touch with industry. This means regular chats with employers, site visits, advisory group meetings, whatever works. And we've got to keep checking. Are our learners learning the right stuff in the right way for the jobs that they want? Our assessment should reflect the real world. If our tradies, if we're training tradies, make sure they're assessed on practical tasks that they actually do on site. And we need to document how our learners progress through them and set them up for future employment or future study. And that could be through observation records, feedback from industry supervisors, or even mapping our assessments to workplace expectations. Foundation skills like communication, problem solving, digital know-how aren't just nice to have anymore. They're essential. The new standards make it clear. If learners can't work in a team, write basic emails, or navigate a digital platform without breaking into a sweat, then they're going to struggle in today's workplaces. So RTOs need to spot these skills gaps early. Build these skills into the training and not bolt them on later. So instead of pretending, learners actually practice the real stuff, like using a digital system to complete a workplace task, preparing those simple reports, or managing communication in a team environment. Supporting learner progress takes more than good vibes and crossed fingers. It calls for RTOs to stay switched on, watching how learners are tracking and stepping in early. It's not just about ticking boxes or counting completed units. Real progress means putting all of those clues together. Assessment results, attendance dips, trainer gut feeling, and even that occasional "I'm totally fine" when it's clearly it isn't. With the right mix of info and action, RTOs can catch issues early, tweak what's needed, and keep learners on the rails. So keeping tabs on learners isn't just a one-time job. It's something RTOs need to stay on top of throughout the training journey. Luckily, we've got some tools to make that easier. So our individual learning plans, they keep goals clear and let you tweak things as we go. We've got our formative assessment, showing us what's landing and what's not. And we've got our LMS dashboards, and they keep track of attendance, results, engagement, and they can flag when a learner might be going quiet. Our feedback from our trainers and from the learners also give us the inside scoop on what's working. And flexible training plans mean you can either speed things up or slow them down, or switch up support when needed. Together, these tools help RTOs do more than just log process. They actually make it. So after all the great support, flexible strategies, and practical assessment, job-ready training, there's one thing we need to do. We need to show the evidence. Because under the new standards, it's not enough to say, yep, learners are progressing. We need to be able to prove it with actual, visible, real-world evidence that backs it up. So what does that look like? Our assessment records, they shouldn't just have the final mark, but they should include trainer comments that show how the learner has improved. We want to get that learner feedback that tells us that they're feeling more capable, more independent, or just more ready to take on real world. And we need those observation notes where trainers have captured things like improved collaboration, better time management, or more consistent safe work practices. We need those records of support. We need to show things like tutorial support, adjusted learning plans, or reasonable adjustments that help those learners stay on track. Okay, so we've done quite a bit there of talking about what we can do, but we also need to be showing this self-assurance. So let's talk about self-assurance, not as a compliance exercise, but as a practical, purposeful way to improve what we do every day. So the self-assurance tips I'm going to talk about are all about bringing the standards to life. They're here to help us check what's working, picking up on what might need a tweak, and ultimately to make sure that learners are getting the support they need and when they need it. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's about small, smart actions that keep learner experience front and centre. So as we've said, self-assurance is your RTO's way of checking, is this working? And is it working for our students? It's not just about meeting the standards. It's about making the experience better for every learner. And so we have the practice guides for the standards for 2025, and they include information that helps RTOs look under the hood. They provide examples. Now, let's be upfront here. They're not a full list of every activity or risk. And we don't have to do all of those activities that are listed there to be able to show compliance. They're a guide that shows what we should consider within the contents, the size and the scale of our student cohorts and of our RTO's operations. So let's just have a little look at the self-assurance questions in the practice guides. They offer valuable opportunity for an RTO to step back and take a thoughtful look at how their systems are really working. These questions prompt meaningful reflection on what's being done and where there's room to grow and how everyday practices impact learner success. By using these questions to guide regular review, RTOs can strengthen their approach to learner support, inclusion and wellbeing. And so moving forward beyond compliance to create genuine, high-quality training environments where every learner gets a chance to thrive. So what I'm going to do is I've got the self-assurance questions here on the slide. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about ways that if we were asked in audit, we could show that we are meeting the requirements of these outcome standards. So standard 2.3 and 2.4. It looks at that students have access to support services, trainers and assessors and other support staff to support their progress throughout the training. Okay, so what we can say is at our RTO, we start by identifying learner needs right from enrolment using LLN assessments and learner profile forms. We use that information to tailor learning plans and track progress through engagement data and trainer observation. Our support is easy to access. Students can book online or reach out directly, and we stick to a 48-hour response time. We actively encourage disclosure of disability in a safe, respectful way and work with learners to agree on practical, reasonable adjustments that actually help. It's about being proactive, personal, and making sure no learner slips through the gaps. Okay, so a practical example. Let's say we have a learner with ADHD who joins a business course. And during that orientation, they mentioned that they find it hard to focus and manage their time. So the RTO could respond with a tailored practical plan. Let's break up big tasks into small weekly chunks. Offer oral assessments where it makes sense. Provide audio versions of resources and help install time management app. And so after a few weeks, they review the plan with the learner to see what's working and what needs tweaking. And so this is a great example of how standard 2.3 and 2.4 work in action. Spotting support needs early, making reasonable adjustment, and checking things to make sure it's actually helping. Okay, so now let's look at 2.5. The learning environment promotes and supports the diversity of VET students. So our response could be, we actively support participation from underrepresented groups by using inclusive marketing, flexible enrolment processes, and building strong links with community organisations. We could say we engage directly with our local First Nation community and regularly seek feedback to understand how we're perceived and how we can do better. Our systems, policies and practices are reviewed to ensure they're inclusive and culturally safe. And we train our staff to recognise and respond to bias and discrimination. So we have clear policies, safe reporting channels and swift responses that help us manage incidents of harassment or violence, while cultural competence is built through ongoing, real, specific professional development. We also monitor the learning environment through student feedback and staff reflections to make sure it stays welcoming, respectful, and safe for everyone. So another example, an RTO delivering construction courses that noticed that women and First Nation learners aren't enrolling in strong numbers. So they could take action. They partnered with a local Aboriginal employment agency to run info sessions. They brought in a First Nations trainer to coordinate delivery and mentor. And then they adjusted training times to suit family and community needs. They also reviewed their learning materials to remove any gender stereotypes and provide cultural awareness for all staff. With this, having a dedicated contact for First Nations students. As a result, they had a more diverse cohort in the next intake and a noticeable boost in the student satisfaction across the board. So it's a great example of what intentional, inclusive action can achieve. So 2.6, it says, the wellbeing needs of the VET cohort are identified and strategies are put in place to support their needs. So how do we answer this question? We identify student wellbeing needs through cohort profiling, orientation surveys, and data from past training delivery. For high-stress courses or diverse learner groups, we match support services to real needs, whether that's mental health referrals, stress management, or maybe even some community partnerships. Now, our staff promote these support consistently across our handbooks, our LMS, and during class check-ins. And so learners always know where to check in. What can we say? We regularly collect student feedback to review what's working and improve where needed. And to keep students safe, we have clear policies, prevention strategies, and confidential reporting systems in place to respond quickly and swiftly to any incidents of, abuse, harassment, violence, anything that could matter. So my last example is an RTO delivering aged care qualifications. They noticed that their students were dropping out during their first work placement. So they had a look through their feedback and through the incident reports, and then they started to take some actions. So they introduced a placement preparation workshop, and in it they put some self-care strategies. They partnered with a local mental health service so that students could have drop-in support if they needed it. And they trained their staff to recognise signs of emotional distress. And so then they also added wellbeing check-ins as a survey midway through the placement. And they found the results were great. They had happier students, fewer dropouts, and much better placement outcomes. So again, here's a great example of how targeted wellbeing can make a real difference. So at the end of the day, great training isn't just about meeting the standards. It's about meeting learners where they're at and setting them up for where they're going. Understanding the standards is essential. But I think what's most important is applying them in practical, responsive, and learner-centred ways. And that's what makes the real impact happening. So let's use those self-assurance questions and the tips from the practice guides so that our RTOs can have a powerful opportunity to reflect and refine. And let's raise the bar. I think that when support is timely, inclusion is genuine, and we've got that strong industry engagement, everyone wins, especially the learner. So again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I apologise for the croaky voice. I hope that you found this session valuable, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us. So this is number 3 out of our 5-part series. So keep your eye open for our next professional opportunity, which is coming soon.